So just moving on to theme two. And theme two looks at what are the effective actions we need our goalkeepers to produce out of possession, and how else can they proactively manage the game. So Tux, this question's first for you. And it's, how do you stop boredom for a goalkeeper? So, if we relate ourselves back to that 9-year-old goalkeeper, there's periods in the game where they want to go and be the striker, or they want to be the midfielder, or they want to be the defender and go and head the ball. But I suppose, once they move through the phases of being a 9-year-old up to 15 and then into 18, how do you stop boredom? And is there anything, that you've advised your senior goalkeepers or younger goalkeepers, or when you've worked with grassroots, any sort of methods of how to stay switched on, I suppose?
Yeah. I suppose if a number of people might remember the film Kes, when the guy is swinging on the crossbar, isn't he? And you're on the pitch, you turn around, you look at the goalkeeper, and he's leaning up against the post or swinging on the crossbar, and that's what we want to get out of. So for a young goalkeeper, obviously keeping themselves concentrated and focused on the game is a challenge in itself. So one of the main things I would be looking at is probably just, trying to encourage them to have trigger thoughts, or even you as a coach giving them trigger words to think about. So, it might be themselves asking themselves, in relation to what I've shown on that ABC, where is the ball, asking them the question, where's the ball? So, and then relating that back, if it's in C, and then they can answer the question by saying, right, I need to be in C, or, if it's in B, where do I need to be in relation to the ball now? Or asking themselves, am I in the correct position? And then referring to that ABC, for instance. Other things, might be from the positional sense, is there pressure on the ball? Isn't there pressure on the ball? And so if they're thinking all these things within the game, hopefully that it'll keep them focused. I remember a former goalkeeping coach saying to me about, goalkeeping, 95% of it, you need to try to be concentrated on the game and staying involved. And he would encourage me just to try to talk to your defenders and organise your defenders. So, no doubt that goes on in the senior game, and the development stage, post U18, no doubt. But in younger academy football, it might be just a simple process of just encouraging your goalkeeper just to continue to talk with the defenders and organise. Tuck in your, come back, do this. Are you marking? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And little trigger questions and trigger words, which you can ask the goalkeeper yourself from the side. So when the game's going on, the game's up the other end, you turn, you look at the goalkeeper. Are you in the right position? Where should you be now? That type of thing, and hopefully they'll stay focused and won't be swinging on that crossbar or leaning up against that post.
And I suppose, Tux, just thinking about it there, it changes depending on age. So if you've got like a 9 to 11-year-old, they play on smaller pitches, so the number of actions that they're going to be faced with out of possession is going to be higher than probably a 12 to 15-year-old once they go to that bigger pitch.
Yeah.
So that's probably a really good learning space. I'm just thinking out loud here, 12 to 15, where they get to almost like understand themselves, understand a little bit more about the game. So instead of it just being, kicking balls and that little fun element, there's a learning part going on now about the game at that 12 to 15s. And then they get to that 16s, 17s, 18s where, they're imparting that knowledge into a full-size 11v11 where there's probably more actions because, again, maturity is occurring.
Yeah, definitely. And, like you say, you're talking about the size of the pitches there are changing. So when they step up to under 12s, they go onto the 11v11 pitch and the big pitch. So they've got to adjust their pitch geography accordingly to, the back four then and, the 11v11 game, rather than the small side of the game. So constantly things are changing. And as you said, the maturity of the outfield players, the maturation of the outfield players will all change. And they've got to adapt to that. The ball comes through a little bit quicker. The ball travels a little bit faster. The ball travels a little bit further. So, they've got to really, going back to my question, or my answer from the first question, sorry, when you're talking about understanding the trajectory of a ball or the speed of the ball when it's played through, that all adjusts as you travel up the pathway of a goalkeeper through your life of football, no doubt.
Really interesting. So Sam, slightly linked in the sense of, we're talking there about key skills, I suppose, through different developmental age groups. And what are the top level traits, biggest skills of goalkeepers? You get to work with some of the top goalkeepers in your age group in the country and some in the world. So, what are the top traits, biggest skills? And then I suppose, like, what are the actions that our goalkeepers need, out of possession and also to proactively manage the game?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd just like to thank Tux for referencing Kez. So, being from Yorkshire myself, I'm glad you've managed to get that in, Tux. So, thanks for that. But no, the three key areas. If I had to pick three, really good question. If I had to pick three, the number one would be effective actions, whether you're defending the space, area, or goal. And just to put a little bit more meat on the bones of that, if we just think about defending the goal solely, there's multiple ways of defending the goal in terms of, like, 1v1s is quite a good one. So if you are just a smothering goalkeeper, or you're a blocking goalkeeper, you may be negating the spread, and the spread is an effective technique that can be used at certain times. So being able to produce those three actions successfully will make you really effective within those actions. Having said that as well, if you are sort of like that, if I keep going back to Hugo Lloris, but if you look at Hugo Lloris, because he's really quick off his line, he can afford to be deep because he'll end up with the smother action, and he's really effective with dealing with the 1v1 in that way. So that's just sort of a bit of a sort of how can I say, whistle stop tour on the defend the goal stuff. And then you look at defend the space. If you look at, like, Manuel Neuer last night, if you watch Manuel Neuer a little bit, I know he got caught out for the goal, but in general, like, Manuel Neuer, when he defends the space, he's actually thinking about sometimes keeping possession. So although it's an out of possession action when the ball comes over the top, he's actually thinking about how can he play the ball to the midfield player, or can he just pass that off to his centre half and keep possession, rather than maybe another goalkeeper would come and just be happy clearing it down the field. So that would be another effective action that he's using to help the team and be that sort of world-class goalkeeper in that sort of area. So that would be my number one, would be effective actions. My number two is going to seem like a really general point, but big saves. And the way I can say big saves is a match-defining winning save. So the save that people talk about on Match of the Day, the save that people go, we'd have drawn that game or lost that game if the goalkeeper didn't make that save at that time. So that would be the key. One of the massive key things for me would be, if you're a goalkeeper who makes saves but can't make big saves, that's going to limit you as a team as well. So having that goalkeeper that can produce those successfully and consistently is going to be really good for you and key for me, definitely. And then the third point for me, Ant, would be being a really good proactive manager out of possession. So what I mean by that is through your positioning, so being in optimal positions, ready to defend the space, area, or goal, whichever one that you're faced with, in line with the triggers and the scenarios that are ahead of you. Being in them optimal positions will always put you in the best possible start point for the effective actions and maybe the big saves. So it sort of starts from there, if that makes sense. And then the other thing for me, which is massive, is your instruction. So we're speaking a lot about saves, we're speaking a lot about defend the space, defend the area, crosses, all that sort of stuff. But actually, if you're an excellent communicator and you've got an outstanding relationship with your back four and your instruction to your back four is really good, you might not have to produce anything, because as a team, you've collectively done really well. And being a really good instructor with your information actually is probably better than making a save at times, or is, it should stop you making the save. So that would be my sort of third overriding point that encompasses the other two as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think just on that point there, Mickey, is like, you're probably linking support positions there with communication. Me and you I've had these conversations in the past of goalkeepers that we've watched where their communication skills are probably a little bit less, but they're really focused and really, key at understanding where their positioning might be. So probably thinkers versus communicators. But when they do give the communication, they're giving real detail rather than just a consistent sound or a commentary all the way through. So it's a really good point that you raised there. It's like, am I, delivering something? Am I communicating? or am I just, imparting and giving a bit of commentary all the way through? Which I think is a really important part that you've raised. So, Tux, just a question that's come in here, which is, what are the benefits of a high line of a goalkeeper versus almost like a more of a passive starting position?
Related to team play, would you say there?
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I would say, if you're a goalkeeper that is comfortable playing a high line, outside your area and squeezing up, certainly that's going to help your team play. So even from the front, being able to press higher up the field. So best example for me, again, Manchester City, where they press and how they press, similar to the types of Liverpool and so on, where they press and how high they press. So the front 3 or 4, whatever they end up playing, they press high. That gets the midfield on, and that gets the defend. Obviously the back 4 or back 3, depending on what they play, that gets them up. And whereas before you'd say, well, just hold the halfway line. These teams now are pushing and squeezing play literally 10, 15 yards inside their opponent's half. So the goalkeeper of them teams now, it's no good them sitting inside the 18-yard area and having 50 or 60 yards of space to defend. They then need to be in them sort of areas where your Dave Marshalls were, etc. And then if they lose possession, they become the first point of attack again when teams clear the ball, or if they can't go forward and they need to recycle, they're in a more advanced position. So Sam mentioned Neuer just now. The amount of times Neuer virtually plays as a centre half, sometimes just recycling play now. So he then acts not just he acts as a player then, as an outfield player to some instance, when the team becomes in possession, but certainly out of possession, he adds that extra cover certainly behind that defensive unit.
It's interesting because you probably got some goalkeepers that want to position a little bit deeper and probably feel that they're more effective at maybe defending the goal. Will want to start deeper and deal with the ball that once it comes over, I'm in that 1v1 situation, or I'm in that 2v1 situation, I can get the shot off. I suppose it's for us as coaches and outfield coaches understanding the trade-offs. If my goalkeeper does position high and they want to be really effective at that, they've got a long distance to cover to go back and maybe defend the goal. Or vice versa, you've got a goalkeeper who positions slightly deeper because they want to affect the goal, but aren't maybe as forthcoming to defend the space. Yeah. So, just one question here is like, how do you sort of transfer that to an outfield coach? How would you, as a goalkeeping coach with all your experience, go, this is the goalkeeper that I've got and this is sort of their key strengths with the positioning that they have?
Yeah, the communication with outfield coaches is vital, and it's certainly things that we speak about now on all our UEFA courses, and are looking to encourage far more. As a goalkeeper coach, we have a load of knowledge to offer, and we shouldn't just be seen as that former goalkeeper that would just be in the corner just kicking balls, and then when you're called, when the goalkeepers are needed, they come over and they just join in for a five-a-side or outfield play. We have a lot to offer the outfield coaches now, and I think that's important. And as goalkeeper coaches, we have to come to the forefront then as well, and we have to show our knowledge. So, if there are aspects of the outfield play where we think we can incorporate our goalkeeper and pass on the strengths of our goalkeeper or the weaknesses of the goalkeeper, depending on what the profile is and the characteristics are, as we've already spoken about, we have to sell them, them aspects to the coaches, to the head coach, to the assistant coach, whoever it may be. And, when we're talking about, a style of play or a way of playing then, or, in devising your coaching sessions and the training sessions, not just for yourself as a goalkeeper coach, for an outfield coach also, is vitally important. So that dialogue, with the individuals is vitally important.
Mm. So the next part really links nicely to that, Tux, because you're talking about sort of our imparting on outfield sessions. Now, a part of the goalkeeper's game that rarely gets touched upon in goalkeeping practices is communication. So probably the first chance that a goalkeeper gets is really when they go with an outfield team. And you rarely see a practice where they're working on one aspect of the training and it's coupled with communication, especially in goalkeeping. It's rarely that's seen. I'm defending a cross and I'm giving instructions to people that aren't necessarily there in a goalkeeping practice. So one question that's come in here, Miki, is like, how do we almost like upskill the goalkeepers, and how can I develop instructions given by the goalkeeper? Because communication is very important, like we know, for a goalkeeper when an attack is developing. But how would you encourage maybe a quieter goalkeeper to give information to the back four and feel confident, to deliver that in a game and in a team practice?
Yeah, I've just had a quick look at the chat box, and I just think it's great that everybody's been throwing some really good questions in. And I think the questions you alluded to come from Brandon and Samuel. So I'll try and answer this as best as I can. But I think there's a few multiple different tactics you can use to try and improve communication and also try and sort of develop communication within young goalkeepers. And might not always be young goalkeepers. It could be foreign goalkeepers sometimes. If you've got a foreign goalkeeper who's come over, if you're working in an academy, for example, and you get a 17-year-old, Hungarian or something like that come into your academy, there's going to be some communication stumbling blocks within that as well. So we can take it from grassroots even into academies here. It's all going to be relative. I think one thing you might do, as wacky as it sounds sometimes, is sort of get them to play different roles. So if a goalkeeper has the opportunity within a training session to sometimes be a centre half or a fullback or something like that, they're playing a role and they're learning a role as well. So it'll make them understand of, right, okay, what do I need to do here? So if they're really wide, as an example, and we turn the ball over, as a centre half, they're going to want to narrow so they can't shoot at goal. So actually, if they know they've done that as a centre half, or that's what's required of a centre half, when they go in goal, that might be the communication point that they need to pass on to that centre half in front of them. So when they see that transition of the turnover, it may be as basic and as simple as shouting narrow, but it's also key that everybody knows what narrow means. So from the coach, from the outfield players to the goalkeeping coach, you have that terminology that everybody knows and understands and knows what that means when the goalkeeper says that, or when any outfield player says that as well. So that would be key for me, and experiencing them different roles can actually be really beneficial. The other thing I just want to mention is, like, they may be quiet because they don't know what to say. So, I think we need to encourage them and praise the intent if they do communicate. The other thing we need to be mindful of is, let's just give an 11-year-old example, and a ball comes through, and the defender's in the wrong position, and the goalkeeper and the defender's meeting at the same time, and they don't say anything, and then you get that scenario where they run into each other and the striker just taps in the back of the net, rather than maybe the coach possibly shouting onto the pitch, you've got to say something there. They might not know what to say. I know it might be basic, but I think we need to make that point. Like, if they don't understand that might be why they're quiet. So helping them with their understanding of what to say will be key, and we can help them through that through the games, and praise the intent when they do say stuff. I think we met, Tux mentioned it perfectly above when in a couple of questions earlier when he said about like sort of trigger information and sort of cues, so we can guide them to the answers. So if we shout onto the goalkeeper, are we okay if we turn the ball over? And the goalkeeper looks at it and goes, oh no, we're not. I need him to come in and tuck in. But there's a communication point. We've helped him. We've guided him through that communication point, rather than just tell him what the communication point is. We've involved them in that process. And again, I would just like to say, like, we need to massively praise the intent, regardless of the outcome. Even if we are working with those goalkeepers who aren't that confident in communicating, we need to help them and support them through this. So involve them as much as possible. And I would just like to finish by saying they always need the why. So for understanding, if we're asking them to maybe give certain information to a certain player, they need to know why they're giving that information and what the relevance of that information is. And involving in that process will help them understand more about the communication side of it, and will give them the confidence and encouragement to go and actually give this information across to their players.
It's a fascinating aspect of goalkeeping, I suppose, in any walk of life, really, communication, isn't it? Because I know you're a big believer in this, Miki, and the last camps that you've been doing recently. And I've obviously played around with it, just almost like you said there, like acting within a practice. So, we're not lucky at times to be able to have 20 players with us. we've almost got to play act. You know, here's a scenario of 5 players, manage the player that you've got in there, but he's imaginary. What are you going to do? And I suppose that ties, Miki, to like timing, would you say, of communication as well? So, you know, the ball is out wide. A really interesting point here is like, ball is out wide. At what point do I stop communicating, position and action? Or, you know, do I carry on communicating all the way through my positioning and action? You know, is there a time where I almost like separate the different parts?
Yeah. I think in terms of like triggers has been used quite a lot, and you're looking for triggers to communicate as well. So in phases of play, and if the midfielder has the ball in the centre of the pitch and he plays a long ball wide out to their winger, there's an opportunity to scan and have a look over my opposite shoulder. So if the ball is on our left side of the pitch, so our left back is going to be defending the cross when the ball goes out there. If we've had a quick look as that ball's on the way to our right back, there may be a communication point I need to say. So I might be telling him to tuck in. So as I'm telling him to tuck in, I'm actually now still looking at the ball, because as soon as the ball ends to be there looking and focusing on the ball, but I've told him to tuck in, I don't need to look at him again because I've seen it early and I've given the information early. So it's those, what are the triggers within the game where we can communicate? I would also look for triggers as a coach as well. So I think it's important to mention, you don't want to be saying to your goalkeeper, for example, you know, what do we need to say here? And actually somebody's just about to attack him, because we need to be thinking about how we coach it and when we coach it as well.
Yeah. And I think just your final point there, Miki, that you raised before was like praise the intent. I've heard you say that a lot when we've worked together as coaches, but praise the intent rings home to me, because if you've got that 9-year-old who's really quite confident to communicate, but it's not necessarily the right communication at that point, it's fantastic that he's doing it. And then hopefully as the pitch gets bigger and more players occur and his knowledge of the game occurs, then we would like to think that information, you know, and that confidence translates to really good communication. So yeah, I really like that phrase, praise the intent.